Good morning. I am Dr. Harvey, and we're going to start this introductory video to our biostats course that we're having this summer. So just a few things about the course. As we're going to see in a minute, the way you progress in this course is usually there will be a PowerPoint that you'll look at. And all these are in D2L now, so we'll look at the PowerPoint. That's the first thing you want to do. Then after reading or looking through the PowerPoint I provide for you, you then want to move on to chapters in a book by Lane, which is online and free. It's like one of the good things about this class. So I'll show you how to find it in a moment. Now, Lane's chapters have a series of multiple choice questions and a series of exercises that you normally do. Completing these is key to passing the quizzes. So if you sort of skimp on this, you're going to bomb the quiz. Okay, so it's very important to always do multiple choice and exercises from Lane's book. Now, as far as the exercises, we actually have the answers to those exercises in a file called the Guide Volume 3. And again, I'll show you where that is. That's also on D2L. Okay, so after completing these two things, then you'll be ready to take a quiz or do homework. So for this first week, I have these already set up in there. There's no restrictions on the quiz and homework this week. You can do them at any time, just as long as you finish them before Friday, which is the due date. All right? And you have like unlimited time on these things. So we will have a series of these PowerPoints, and they're going to go into separate folders. After we do a certain number of them, or well, once we get to about the middle of the semester, then we'll be taking a midterm exam. And then we'll continue sort of the same procedure, and then we'll have a comprehensive final exam at the end of the course. Okay, so a couple other things. I will be putting the updated syllabus in D2L. You should all try and read that at some point. But especially since we're going to not be meeting in person, you need to know how to contact me if you have questions. So you can send me emails, but it's very important to use my Broward email address. Do not use the D2L email system. I will not get these messages and I will not read them. So you've got to send it to my Broward email. Usually though, a text message is probably the quickest and the easiest way. So you're going to find my phone number in the syllabus, and you can just send me text messages through there. Don't leave voicemails, however, because my voicemail system hasn't been working that great, and it's sort of a pain for me to return them. So instead, just send a text message. You can certainly try and call me, and if I answer the phone, we can talk. If you don't get me when you try and call, the best thing is to just send a text message and then I'll call you back whenever I can. Okay? Now, in the text message, always begin with your name. So I need to know who it is that has sent the text message. I don't have all your names stored in my directory. So begin with, this is John Smith, blah, blah, blah. If you don't sign your text message, I'm just going to delete it because I don't have time to try and figure out who it is. Okay, so please do that. Now, the other thing you're going to be doing is you want to check Desire to Learn every day because I'm going to be updating it through the semester. Especially at the beginning here, I should have almost everything in there that you're going to need. But we'll be playing some catch up for the rest of the year. So you've got to check it daily. All right? Okay, so on the first few chapters we're going to be covering, we talk about descriptive statistics. So I'm going to begin on the board a little bit, and then we're actually going to move over and take a look at a computer because most of what you do in this class, you use the computer for. All right? So I'm going to sort of move this camera here so we can see this other board. Let me make sure everything's in focus. Okay, maybe this will look a little bit better. All right. Okay, so as I said, the first part of this course is on descriptive statistics. So these are statistics that you use frequently to describe characteristics of some population you may be interested in studying. So they're different from inferential statistics. Most of the class we're going to actually be generating things called inferential statistics. And inferential statistics are statistics where we can draw some sort of inference or deduction. So for example, if I want to know if two species of butterflies are different sizes, I would do something called a t-test. And then I might be able to say, well, the monarchs have a bigger wingspan than the Gulf fritillaries or something like that. So a t-statistic would be an example of an inferential statistic. You can't do that with the statistics we're going to be covering in these first few chapters. Okay? Another thing we should probably draw a distinction on is what is the difference between a statistic and a parameter? So a statistic is based on a sample. So for example, if we wanted to know how big monarch butterflies are, we could go out and collect like 30 or 40 of them and measure their wingspan. We could find a mean, an average of the wingspans. That's something called central tendency in the data. And you're going to be learning about several other types of central tendency, like median and mode, in these chapters you're going to be reading about. Okay, so based on our sample, that value we got would be what we call the mean, all right? And that's a good estimate of what is going on in the population. So there's a population mean. This would be the sort of width of the butterflies of all the monarchs on the planet, all right? What is their average wingspan? That's the population mean. Usually there's no way to know that. I mean, we'd have to go out and essentially collect every single butterfly, every single monarch that exists on the planet, which we're never going to do. That mean is called a parameter. Now sometimes you have parameters, but not always, okay? And then the mean from our sample, this is a statistic, okay? So the mean from our sample is an estimate of the mean of the population. And that's what statistics are. We use statistics to estimate parameters. Now, you may notice I've used different symbols over here. Usually for statistics, we use sort of regular like English letters like M and X and S and things like that. But when we're talking about parameters, we almost use a symbol from the Greek alphabet. Like this is the Greek letter mu, which is commonly used for mean. Okay. All right. So over here, I have a drawing of what we call a normal distribution. So this would be a good representation of the data we might get from measuring widths of butterfly wings. So most of the butterflies would be sort of close in here to the mean. So sort of what you're looking at on this side would be the frequency. Okay, so frequency, like, what are most of them like? Well, most of them are close to the mean here. But then you'll have some butterflies that are really sort of small, and then others that are really large, okay? So when you look at distributions like this, we actually need two types of statistics or parameters to describe them. Now, I put a parameter here, so I guess we'll talk about, well, how can we describe the width of this thing? Because sometimes a normal distribution will be really narrow. I'm drawing this one kind of narrow. Sometimes they'll be relatively wide. So you can have a lot of variation in the population or just a little. So how do we quantify or describe that variation? Well, one thing we could try to do is, what if we took every individual and sort of figured out how far the individual data points are from the mean? So in other words, we could take each individual data point and subtract the mean. And then if we just took an average of these, so we were going to need to add them all up. So for example, that individual would be sort of a small value, but from over here it'd be a big value. You see what I mean? And then we could average these things. Okay, that would give us kind of an estimate of how far apart they are. But we've got another problem because now these are going to be negative values if we plug them in. Those are going to be positive values. So we need to get rid of the sign somehow. So what we can do is we can square this term, and that gets rid of the sign, doesn't it? Because a negative squared is a positive value. Okay, this is the formula for a parameter called variance. So that is variance. Now it's squared, okay. You can take the square root of the variance, all right? The square root of the variance equals to something called standard deviation, which is just sigma. So sigma squared, variance, standard deviation. Sigma, or standard deviation, this is really, really useful because if you were to kind of draw a line here and a line here so that this is the mean plus one standard deviation, so that's what that is. We'll call it one standard deviation. And this is the mean minus one standard deviation. Okay. This area in here is always about 68% of the total population. So standard deviation ends up being a really, really useful way of describing populations. And frequently, what people will do is, trying to figure out where I put it, oh, here it is. Frequently, what people will do is they'll report data using standard deviation. So for example, this might be something I might say, all right, you're going to see some other examples of this in the PowerPoint, and you're going to have to write a sentence like this as part of the homework. Okay, so you might say something like, monarchs have a wingspan of, and I don't really know what their measurement would be. I'm going to say something like 30 to 60 millimeters. All right, that's a range, sort of the lowest value in the data set and the highest value of the data set. And then people will usually put a mean in parentheses. So let's say 45 plus or minus the standard deviation. All right, so we'll put one standard deviation here. We'll just make up something 5. Okay. This is frequently, and then usually if this is an estimate, another thing you usually want to put in here is a sample size. So we'll put in, let's say we had gone out and collected 30 of these butterflies. Okay, this is typically how somebody reports data, and it's a nice, succinct way of doing it. Because somebody looking at this data needs to know a couple of things. They might want to know what the highest value and the lowest value is. They would like to know what the average is, and they would like to know how much spread there is in the data. So that's why we provide the mean plus or minus the standard deviation. You need to tell them what your sample size is so they can kind of have some degree of confidence in that value. Obviously, this is not going to be as close if you'd only counted 2 butterflies, right? So that's why we put the standard deviation, the sample size here. Now, frequently you have to tell people, like if you were writing a paper and you wanted to put some information like that, you usually have to tell your audience what this means, because some people will put something here called standard error. Now, we're not going to hear about standard error for a while. I don't think we get to that till chapter 10 or something. But usually people will put standard deviation here. Okay? All right, so at this point what we're going to do is we're going to move over to look at the computer, because I want to show you where some things are located there in PAST. I'm sorry, not in PAST, in your D2L, and then we'll also look at some of the programs we use in this class. So I'm going to reposition the tripod here so you guys can see the computer and I can sit down and everything. So if you'll just bear with me a second while I do this. All right. We'll move over here. Let me just make sure the computer is going to be clear for everyone. Okay. Okay, let's see, a little lopsided there. Let's see if we can get it a little higher. There we go. Okay, I think I should be able to work on this while you're looking. Okay. All right, so what we have here is your D2L screen. All right. So here we have the very first page of D2L. So when you log into D2L, you should be able to, find your courses that you're taking. I assume most of you are probably just taking biostats, but maybe somebody's taking more than one class. At any rate, you just click on your course. This is the one I'm setting up for you guys right now. And over here, you're going to have a calendar. So this is going to tell you what is due on various days. So notice that on Monday, all right, you want to look at the PowerPoint, okay? And you also want to look at this folder in there by Weisgerber. It's like a little paper that I want you to take a look at. And then notice by the end of the week, you want to take these quizzes and you want to do this homework. All that stuff is due, okay? All right, so let's take a look at the content. At this stage, I've only set up the first folder here, but as we continue through the course, I'm going to be adding new modules. So this first folder, or this first module, this is going to be the introductory stuff. All right, so as you can see, here is the PowerPoint you need for this class, and then you've got the Weisgerber thing here that you're going to be looking at. So at any rate, those are some of the two main things you're going to use. All right, so let's take a look at the book that goes with this class. All right, so here we go. So this is, to find this book, so this is developed by David Lane. What you type in, if you just type in all one word online stat book in the search bar, this is going to come up. It's like the first thing, and it's free. I'll also have details of how to find it in the syllabus. All right. Now you may get a little thing here that gives you an old version and a new version. So pick version 2. That's not the case on this particular page. Let's see what we get here. Yeah, if you get a page that looks sort of like this, click version 2 so we're all looking at the same thing. Now, here you can see a list of the various chapters, and for this week, you're going to be looking at chapters 1 through 4. So we're going to go through those fairly quickly because they're mostly a review of stuff you should already know. But I'm sure there's some new stuff in here, and I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff that I think is probably new for you. Like, even though I was just talking about means and variances, I'm sure that's stuff you've already had in a statistics class before you even signed up for biostats. Okay, let's take a look at one of these chapters. All right, so let's look at this one. We'll switch down to chapter 3. So when you click on one of these chapters, as you see, there's another table of contents here that breaks these things down. And then if we go to one of these things, there's some reading you do. So you sort of read through a page. It tells you about, looks like this one's talking about different types of means and the median and the mode and, what those things are. And then at the bottom, notice that you have some sort of little practice questions here. And with these, I'm not going to put that into a calculator, but you might need a calculator to do that. I'm just going to kind of guess here. Maybe it's, maybe 7? I don't know. That's too much. I'm sure it's not that. How about 5.5? We'll see if that works. It may work. No. So notice that it will give you an incorrect and it tells you the correct way to do it. So if you got the wrong answer, notice how there's information there. So this is supposed to be 5. All right. Okay. And then, if you tried to work it again, it'll tell you correct. And then you can go on to the next question. There's a series of these. A lot of times they're multiple choice. Sometimes you work actual little problems there. Now, the other thing that is very important, when you get to the end of the chapter, hold on, not that one. All right, so at the end of this chapter, boy, that's a long chapter. Hold on, I'm looking at the wrong thing again. Let me do this. Section, here we go. This is where it is. Okay. At the very end, there's exercises. All right. So you're going to be doing some of these. Now, I went through these and I made a list of the ones that I think are the most helpful. So for that list is on the very first page of the PowerPoint in D2L. All right. Now you need to do all this for practice before you attempt the quiz. So let's go back here to D2L. I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right. Here's the PowerPoint. Okay, so let's open it up and see what it says here. All right, so introductory stuff, here we go. Yeah, first assignment. Okay, so you want to sort of read through those first 4 chapters, all right, and do the little end of page questions. Like most of them I said are multiple choice. Be sure you do those. They sort of make sure that you understand what Lane had just explained to you. Okay. And then as far as exercises, I think these are the most helpful ones. All right? Okay, notice for chapter 2, he asks you to make several graphs. We're going to use a program called PASS to make graphs, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a little bit. All right? And then you can sort of look through the rest of this. I think if you go through my PowerPoint, I sort of talk about most of the stuff that I think is really important. Like here's another example of, reporting data kind of like I was just doing on the board. Okay. All right. Now, the other thing everybody is going to need for this class is a program called PASS. All right. Okay. So this is what the web page for PASS looks like. To find this, all you write is the word PASS and then a space and write statistics, and you can find this web page. All right, so there's the web address, folk.uio.no. But I'm sure if you just type in PASS and statistics, you'll find it. And it's a free program. So if you have a Windows version, you just click this and it'll download immediately. All right. What it does is it leaves a little icon on the web, on the desktop that looks sort of like a shell like this. Okay, so we want everybody to use one of the most recent versions like 4.01 or 4.02. One of those should be fine. All right, now let's see. And then another thing we're going to be using a lot is Excel. All right, so here's an Excel spreadsheet. Okay, now let's go back over here to the introductory stuff. All right, not that. Okay, I'm going to go back to content. Yeah, okay. All right, here we are. Content for this class. Okay, so some of these other files I have in here. So I have a file here called Lopho-Claudes data. We're going to use that to illustrate a couple of things in this PowerPoint. And then up here I have another Excel spreadsheet. This goes with the homework. All right, so this is for homework 1. When you start working on homework 1, you're going to see it's going to ask you these things. Now, as far as the homework goes, I think since my page is a little different since I am the course administrator, but I think that normally you can sort of click on one of these things and it'll get you to, your homework. You see what I mean? All right. And then notice it provides a description of what the homework is. All right, there's a quiz here. All right, let's see. Here we have, let's see here. I think actually, well, that is one way to find your assignments. You see what I mean? And quizzes and tests, you can find those this way too. But remember, I think that probably the easiest way for most of you folks to find these things is to just click on things over here in your calendar when you're ready to do them. Like so for this week, after you guys feel like you've read Lane's chapters, you've looked at the PowerPoints, etc., you may want to go ahead and start on these. And start on them early, don't wait till 5:30 p.m. on Friday. See, notice these aren't due till like 11:30 p.m., so you've got like as much time as possible. After 11:30 p.m., you cannot do that quiz or that homework, so they have to be done by then. Okay? All right, so we'll continue with this a little bit. So what I want to do is show you guys how to use some of these programs, because you're going to be using them for the homework. First thing I want to do is talk about calculating percentiles. So what this is the Lofo-Culodes data set, and it is in D2L. So you can follow along with this video if you like by just downloading that. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is the data is kind of hard to follow here. So what I want to do is I'm going to remove a couple things. So I'm going to remove this row. So if you just click delete up here, it removes that row. And then to remove more than one row, I can just hold the shift key and click so that I highlight all of them and hit delete to remove those. Now I've got things a little bit more compact. So what I want to do is show you guys how to generate a percentile. Like, what if you want to know what is the top 80% of something? How do you find something like that? Okay, well, as you're going to read in Lane's book, there's several different ways to do that. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to get all this mid-body, hold on, I wanted to tell you one other thing before we do the percentiles. There are several types of data in here. So you may notice that these, by the way, are lizards. What I've done is I've categorized the lizards by what sex they are they male or female? So this is what's called categorical data. And then the data over here in these various columns, what these are scale counts. So counts are what we call discrete data. So they're like whole numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as opposed to continuous data, which we have back over here on the far right. These things are measurements, so like width of the pectoral region. This is like width of the body. All right. These are only constrained by the precision of my instrumentation. So, for example, some of these I just took with a ruler, which can't really get more precise than 1 millimeter. Others I took with something called a digital caliper, which is a lot more precise. Its precision is all the way down to 0.01 millimeters. And that's why you see decimals on some of these but not others. Now that one, 42, that was actually 42.00. The thing is that Excel just drops the 0.00 because they don't really mean anything. Okay. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to practice with percentiles. So for this, I was going to try doing the mid-body scales. Let me see where those are here. Well, I'll tell you what, let's do these ventrals instead. What these are scales counted on the belly of a lizard from right behind its head all the way to its, what we call the cloaca, all right? So just to make this a little easier to work with and to give you guys a little practice manipulating these Excel spreadsheets, I'm going to select this whole column here, and notice it actually has data for 2 species. But I'm going to remove it from this spreadsheet and put it in a brand new one so I can play around with it. So I'm going to hit Control Copy. See how it's got the little line going around it? And then I'm going to open a new one here. Hold on, let's see. If you click on File, All right, new. There we go.